Hey guys, so today I wanted to do something a bit special. I've been requested to create a video on After Effects to explain how to use it, and it's basically an introduction level or beginner level of how to use After Effects. This video might be a little bit longer than what I usually have on my channel because it's a lot of little basics and little things, tips and tricks on how to use After Effects. So hopefully I can do it in one video. If not, I'll have a part 2 coming along. So let's get started. What is After Effects? It is a post-production software, meaning that when you have a director or a photographer that creates content, such as a video or images, you can use this software after they give you the clip. Meaning you can change the colors, you can use the brightness, contrast, you can do effects such as 2D animations, 3D animation as well. You can do a lot of little neat things with green screen, keying, rotoscoping, and all those kind of things. So, how do we start with After Effects? I have here CS6 open. This tutorial can be used with any other versions of After Effects, such as the CC versions, but I have CS6 here. First of all, when I click on different tabs inside of my software, I get a yellow border. This shows you basically where you are focused on. So here I have my project file, right here on the left. If I click in the middle, I have my composition. On the bottom, I have my layer system and my timeline right here. On the right, I have my info, so RGB, the colors of the image. I have my XY coordinates, my preview, which allows me to play and stop or repeat the actual animation. I have my effects and presets right here. So it's a very big list. You can have a lot of things here, such as color correction. So if we open here, you have auto color, brightness contrast, a lot of them. Characters are used basically for typography. So anytime you have a text inside of your composition, you can modify the font. You can change from thin to bold to italic, the size, and all of these little neat things. Paragraph allows you to align that typography into your composition. So if you want it all centered, or you want it to be text on the right, stuff like that. And the align tool, which allows you to align any layer, any image, any shape, effect, or anything into the composition and the center or on the left, or so on and so forth. Now, how do we start with After Effects? I need to create a composition. Basically, the composition is like a vessel. It's where all of your layers and all of your videos will go onto, and that's what's going to be rendered at the end as an actual video when you're done working. So, I go to my composition here on the top left. I click on New Composition or Control N. This will bring up this little panel right here. Composition settings. So I have the name, so I'm going to call it main comp right here. Next, I have my presets. So these are basically resolution and frames for the actual composition. And let me explain this a little bit more. Everything that has NTSC is basically the resolution of American TVs, European TVs, and the frame rates of those respected countries. PAL is typically Middle Eastern or African TV with the resolution and their respective frame rates. And HD is basically any new TV right now. Like you have the normal 1920 by 1080 HD TVs, you have the 4K displays, the 8K displays, and that's what typically we're going to be using right now. So why do we use this? Let's say, for an example, I was tasked with creating a video for a commercial that's going to go on TV. I need to make sure that my resolution will fit on the TV if it is sent by normal satellite. So basically that goes into your TV and not by the actual box that you have that sends you HD channels. Alright, so very important. If it's HD channels, I work with HD TV. If it is normal channels that you get from the TV itself, from the normal antenna, basically, you have to use one of these. Alright, depending on the country, of course. So here we're going to go with HD TV. Now, something very important to see is that there's the name, there's the resolution next to it, and right next to it there's also the amount of frames. So if you have a higher frame, so let's say for an example, if you have a video of 15 seconds and you have 60 frames, that's going to be 60 frames every single second. And you have to understand inside of After Effects, when you are rendering a video, meaning that you are done with the work and you want to get the video out of After Effects, the more frames means the more render time. And render time takes sometimes hours, sometimes minutes, depending on how many frames you have and how big the resolution is. So let's say for an example, I have a 500 by 500 resolution image that's at 60 frames. It's going to be quite fast even though it's 60 frames because the resolution is very small. Also, to understand what resolution is, basically it's the amount of pixels that are generated by the actual video or by the screen. Meaning if I have a 100 by 100 resolution image, that's very low quality. If I have a 1920 by 1080 image, that's a very high quality. So it will render longer, but it will give you the quality that you want to have. So here I'm going to go with an HDTV 1080 at 30 frames. Alright. Next here I have the width and the height, so that's my resolution. It stays exactly the same since I have my preset. This can be changed if you want to, so you can double this, it will become 4K if you want to. Next I have my frame rates. I have my resolution to full, and sorry, I skipped square pixels, keep it square pixels. I have my start time and my end time. So for example here I have my milliseconds, my seconds right here, I have my minutes, and I have my hour. Alright, so here we're going to have 15 seconds with a black background. You can change this by just clicking on it and changing the background to whatever color you feel like. And say OK. Now, a few things will happen. One, I have my composition in the middle. It's a 1920 by 1080 image, basically. And this is where all my videos, my effects, and everything will go into. Alright, like I said, it's like a vessel. On the left in my project tab, I have the main composition open already. And if I notice on the top, it's telling me it's a 1920 by 1080 image at 30 frames with 15 seconds. So this is basically like a video in a sense. Now, there's another way as well to create a composition. So this is the way that you would create a composition if you have nothing inside of After Effects. But what if I want to import images and make one of those images my actual composition? I have to double click on the project file right here on the left, and this will open my desktop, and I'm going to go to After Effects images, and I have a few images here. So let me grab all of them and say open. So for now there's nothing. Basically all I have here is just my files, right? My 3 images. If I click on, let's say, this one, and I want this one to become my composition, I click and drag it to the center, and a few things will happen. One, I get the image itself, and I also get another thing, which is the composition right here at 30 frames for 15 seconds at the same resolution as the image. So this image was a 1920 by 1080, but what if I want, so let me delete this by clicking on delete on my keyboard. Let's say I want, this one is a bit bigger, it's a 2509 by 1673 resolution. Let me click it and drag it. I get the composition now that is the same exact size as the image. Alright, so for now I'm going to use the HD one, which is this one. Perfect. Another thing that happens, inside of my layers, same as Photoshop, whatever is on top will show first, whatever is on the bottom will show behind it. Meaning, if I take any image right now, and I drag it to the composition itself, it is showing first because it's on top of number 3. So if I click and drag this number 2 and put it under number 3, my original image will show. Whatever is on top will take priority. That's what you have to understand from this layer system. Alright? And this is exactly where we're going to be working 90% of the time. Alright, here and here. Alright? So, another thing that happens is that every time I actually import a layer or I put it into the composition, I get these blue lines. These can be changed from clicking on this little blue tab, and I can change, let's say, to green. So my first is green, my second is blue. Alright? So, what if I want this image to show from 0 seconds to 5, and then the other image, the number 2 image, to show from 5 to 15? How do I do this? I go to my 5 right here, using this little timeline. I grab it from the yellow border right here, and I click on this image, and I can scale it from the right side. So if you notice my mouse is right here, it changes the icon, and I can scale this all the way down to 5. Alright, so from 0 to 5 this is showing, and then at the end after 5 there's nothing showing here on the layer system. If I move the cursor just one frame after, the picture that's going to be behind it shows. So this is exactly like a hidden layer if you want. Right here there's no more content for it to show me, even if it's on the top, so whatever's on the bottom will show. Alright, so I go back, 5 seconds, there we go. After, this will show. Something very crucial to understand, and I'm going to explain this with the lowest resolution image I have. So I have this image right now. The worst thing you can do, since this entire composition is a 1920 by 1080, and this image right here is a 1000 by 667 image, it's a lower resolution, meaning a lower quality. The worst thing you can do in Photoshop or After Effects is to grab it and scale it or stretch it up to fit the screen. Why is this very bad? Because one, you are ruining the quality of the image by stretching it. When it's a very big resolution image, you're allowed to scale it down. But when it's a small image or small resolution image, you should never scale it up. So when you're working on a project that is a 1920 by 1080 image and you want to find, let's say, images on Chrome or Firefox, you want some information from the internet or images from the internet, you have to make sure they are either bigger or higher resolution than 1920 by 1080 or just 1920 by 1080. Never smaller. You will actually lose quality by doing this, and it's very dangerous. Alright, so let me delete the image itself. Perfect. Now, let's go over how animation works inside of After Effects. I have here my image of the actual water and the small little wave. And behind it, I know that I have the other image. So let me delete the other one. From 0 to 5 seconds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image and move it from the left all the way to the right with an animation. In my layer tab right here, I have a small little arrow. If I click it, I get something called a transform. Every single layer in After Effects has something called the transform panel. If I open it, I get these little things, which is anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. Anchor point, forget about it for now. Position is basically just the orientation, the position, the place where this image is. Scale, which is basically the scale of the image, shrink to big. Rotation, which is going to be the actual rotation of the image. And opacity, which is how invisible or visible the actual image is. Now, a few things to know, keyboard shortcuts wise. Zoom in and zoom out is done with the scroll wheel on the composition. Alt middle click button, which is basically your scroll wheel button right here, allows me to pan this entire image. Alright, so zoom in, pan, and move the image to wherever you want. Okay? So, let's go over how these work. For me to animate something, every single thing in After Effects that has a stopwatch next to it can be animated. So how do I do this? Let's say I want to start at 0. I'm going to click on my stopwatch. So just left click it. It will create a few things. One, it will create a keyframe right here. So this yellow dot has information inside of it. What information? Basically, it's telling me at 0 seconds, this image is at 960.540. So this is the X and Y coordinate of the image. So again, at 0, this image has these coordinates and it's saved. Basically, these keyframes are like saved points, if you want. If I go to 0, and I move this image just by clicking on V or this little button right here on the left, I click and move it all the way to the left. Now, at 0 seconds, this keyframe has this information. So it knows, it saves the location of this actual picture. If I move to 5 seconds, I can just keep this on. By the way, don't remove the stopwatch. For whatever reason, do not click off the stopwatch. If I move to 5 seconds and I move the image all the way to the right here, I'm going to get a green line in the middle which tells me that from 0 to 5 seconds there is a position translation, meaning it's moved, it animated from one place to another. Now let me go back to 0 and let me press play on my right side here, and this will show that the image is actually animating from the left to the right. Now something very important, if it's too slow, means that the keyframes, which is from this point to this point, are too wide. Right? For me to speed up animations, I need to have less frames in between these two keys. So I need to move this key a bit closer to the other one. So I just select it by left clicking, click and drag all the way somewhere here. And now the animation will go a lot faster. If I want the animation to go slower, I need more frames. So I need to extend this layer first, since we cut it from before, and I can move it past 5 seconds and go to 8 seconds. And if I play the animation right now, you will notice it's a lot slower. More frames, slower action. Less frames, faster action. And by frames, I mean in between the keys. Alright, from this key to this key, or whatever key you have. So, now let's say, for an example, during this entire animation, my image is actually rotating as well. I'm going to click on my rotation stopwatch at 0, right here. And if you notice, the position, scale, opacity, anchor point, all of these have separate lines, meaning that my rotation keys will not go next to the position keys. They each one have a line respective to each other. So from here to 8 seconds, let's actually take the keyframe and put it a lot closer to make it faster. Let's say 2 seconds right here. I want my rotation at this point to go 306 degrees. So I didn't get the value right. Let me just click on it and 360, perfect. And now as it's moving from left to right, it will also rotate as well. Perfect. So in this process, I can actually do multiple animations at the same time, which is very important. Now let's look over something else. Let me delete this. Perfect. So now you understand a bit of the basics of how animation works. Let's look at something else. Let's look at shapes, right? So let's say a sphere. I have here on the top left of my panel something called a shape tool. So I have rectangles, I have rounded rectangle tool, ellipse tool, which is basically a circle, polygon, and star tool. So I'm going to go with a circle. So first of all, when I click it, I get new settings right here. So the fill is basically what is the color that's going to be inside of it. So I'm going to make sure I put red right here. My stroke is basically the outline or the perimeter of that shape, what kind of color it has. So click and drag and hold shift while you're doing so to keep a uniform scale. If I don't press shift while I'm doing this, it will create an ellipse or an oval, which we don't want. So I want a perfect circle. So as I'm clicking here, I press shift, it automatically snaps into an actual circle. Perfect. Now, I want to scale this, so let me open my shape tab here layer on the left, transform, and I want to scale it down a little bit. Now, I am not animating because none of my stopwatches are on, so that's a very good point. Perfect. Next. What if I want this ball to go from left to right to the bottom right to the bottom left, all into one motion? So, I'm going to go move it to the top left right here, click on my position, go to 1 second, move the ball all the way to the right by using the V tool. 2 seconds, I'm going to move it down. 3 seconds, I'm going to move it all the way back here. And now for the 4 seconds, I want it to go back exactly to where it started. So how do I do this? Instead of moving it and getting an inaccurate location, I can click on this first keyframe, which was my original position, keep my line at 5, press Ctrl C and then Ctrl V. And it will actually go create another keyframe, the same exact keyframe here as a copy, and it will go back to the original position. Let me press play here. Perfect. Goes down, animates, and then goes back. Now, if you feel like the animation is stuttering, that's because it's actually using the RAMs of the computer to be able to create these animations. So if I run it again right now, it will not stutter as much as it did before. It will go a lot smoother because I run it the first time, second time it will go a lot smoother. Perfect. And you can know this by this green line that you see here above my blue. If it's full green, it means that the RAMs are actually completely full of this information and they will be able to repeat it as you please. Alright? So that's pretty much done. Now, what if I want to, very quickly, take this video, this 4-second video, let's say, of this ball moving around, and take it into, render it as an actual video for me to actually use for something else. I need to do a render queue. So I have my composition here, my shape layer, perfect. I go to composition on the top left. I go to add to render queue, and this will open a panel on the bottom. So remember these settings. Best settings, I don't have to touch it. It's just if you want a higher setting or a lower setting, doesn't really matter. I say okay, usually I keep it the same. Now, the output mode is the very important one. It's where you compress the video and what format you want it to be. So if you want it to be a QuickTime video, a .movie video, a MP4, so on and so forth. So the first thing I do is I go to my format. And I like to say H.264, which is technically MP4. Perfect. Next, format options. I like my bitrate to be here at CBR, and I like it to be at 1. This is actually compressing the video so that a lot of the information is lost that I don't want. Very good. If I have a song or if I have music inside of my video, I have to click on audio output. So I'm just going to click it on for the sake of it. I don't have any kind of song or any kind of music inside of my video. Next here, I have the output 2. I click it, I say my desktop, and I say video test. Save. Last step is to click on the right button here, which is render. And you're going to hear a very noticeable click or a small little bell that will click when it's done. So my animation is done. I left it for 15 seconds. The animation is for technically 4 seconds. Once this is all of it done, it will ring. Perfect. And now my animation is done. So if I close everything and I open my video test right here, I will have this video animating perfectly well from 0 to 15 seconds. So that's how you actually release the video. Alright, so this is a bit of information of how After Effects works. I'm not going to go into details on how green screening works. I just want you guys to understand what animation does, what are the resolution, how to start in After Effects, how to understand the different settings, the transforms, the animation, the keyframes, the stopwatch, and all of that. Alright, So I hope this was helpful. Please, if you enjoy the videos, make sure you like and subscribe the video and also ring on the notification bell to see more of my content. Thank you very much, guys. See you later.